Oh, hello. You want more? Okay. You may have been there. You get really excited about some old game, something that you really want to play. Say it's something you played from your childhood. Say it's something that you just discovered and you want to play it some more. What do? If you don't own it, you're screwed. If you don't want to grab it, you're double screwed. You've got two options at this point. You have option A, play it on the original hardware. Sounds good, yeah, it makes sense, you know. It began there, you can play it there again. Makes sense, it's probably how you played it in the past. My hair's in my face again, isn't it? And then there's option B, emulate it. I mean, if it's online and it's on your computer, maybe you won't have to go through this hassle again. That's what we're going to be discussing today. This will be mostly like a discussion between myself, weighing the pros and cons of each platform. If there is a pro for emulation, we'll throw it up in one color, probably orange. And if there's a pro for another thing, say original hardware, we will throw it up in blue or something like that. It'll make more sense when we start. We will be discussing the pros and cons between playing on the original hardware and emulation. But before we get into all that, we gotta talk about something important. I'll take that as a cut. My name is EzekielJK and I am live on Twitch, probably right now. I play lots of really weird games. Ultimately, I just want to talk to you guys at the end of the day. So if you think that's gonna sound interesting, or you want to see more of my stuff, go check it out over at the link in the description. That is www.twitch.tv/EzekielJK. Hopefully I got my hand motions in the right spot. Otherwise, well, it's gonna look really strange in the editing process. It was really difficult to edit this cut. Thanks, past Ezekiel. If you want to go check that out, go pop over to the Twitch channel. Also, make sure you subscribe and click that bell logo so that way you get notified of my next video. But alright, back to the show. Option A, original hardware. There are very important reasons that you would want to stay on the original hardware. Number one, and I'm going to do this first so that way you guys aren't getting concerned. Number one, legality. Owning a game on the original hardware, owning the physical copy of the game, means that you own the rights to play your one copy on your own hardware. You'll likely never reach legal trouble if you do that. If you start making copies and stuff, then things start getting sketchy, to say the least. Emulation kind of straddles that line of legality. It's kind of in that gray area because it relies on copies of the original games. It began as a physical object. It was never intended to be ported to a PC, and therefore you do not have the rights to the PC files. You own the rights to a game, and I need to say that a billion times over because there is a rumor that's still going around, and it's been there forever, that by owning the original copy, you get access to one backup copy. That is usually false, at least in America. So from here on out, we are going to be assuming that playing emulated games is legal where you are at. I am no legal expert. If I say something that is actually wrong in your country, disregard it. But understand that emulated copies are just that, copies. The next thing you should actually pay attention to, a big improvement over emulation on the original hardware, is that you are guaranteed to get the original experience, assuming there are no patches, there are no updates, things like that. When you buy the original hardware and the original copy, technically there's no extra knowledge required. You don't need to learn how to boot up an emulator. You don't have to learn how to install various softwares, where to download these games, things like that. And that's awesome. However, and this is more associated for games that are later in the cycle, maybe post, say, maybe PS3 era. Now I need to do some counting. NES, SNES, 64, 7th gen. Anything past the 7th gen can get hairy because there were updates. I own a billion Xbox games that no longer work anymore, but typically that is actually very hard to do. You can also use the original controllers with no remapping if you own the original hardware in the original game. This little strand of hair has been in my face. You just need to take the game out, plug in the remote, and start playing. The buttons look the same. You don't need to figure out that X on your remote is actually Y in the original game. Stuff like that. However, and this is a big pro for emulation, some games had very strange control schemes, at least for modern players, of course. So remapping them may be very, very useful. I've played plenty of N64 games that just drive me up a wall trying to control them on the original controller, because that was before they had 2 sticks on their controller. Now with my Xbox remote that I've plugged into my PC, I could just remap all the C buttons to my right stick, and I'm done. And it makes way more sense, and I don't have to grab a giant wacky remote. Probably one of my favorite parts, and the reason I collect old games, is that you get that like tangible feeling of, this is my game, I put my game into my console, and it's fun. Sometimes having that real object in your hand gives you a serious connection to your own content, to your own stuff. It's something you really can't copy the feeling of. And that's a really strange thing to say, seeing that they are just, you know, pieces of plastic covering pieces of PCP. Covering a pieces of No, I don't mean the drug. That's PCP. I'm saying PCB. When you have plastic and electronics, they can break or get messed up by a lot of things. Cartridge tilting, dirty connections, scratched discs, crushed boxes. Heck, just losing the dang thing can seriously just end your experience. I have done this. I accidentally kicked an old N64 when I had GoldenEye in the thing. I can't play the thing anymore. Somehow it triggered a cartridge tilting situation, and now the game's borked. And now I need to go find a new copy of GoldenEye. When you have these digital copies, they don't do these types of things. They stay on your hard drive for as long as that hard drive exists. And of course, you know, that hard drive can fall apart, but it's far less likely. This strand of hair, yet again, strikes back. We've talked about the original hardware, so let's give emulation its fair shot. Let's see, what does it have that the original stuff does not? You'd be surprised. The big thing for emulation, it's likely the only way you can play a lot of games. You genuinely cannot get a copy of Earthbound in 2020 without spending an absurd amount of money on the original cart. Seriously, look it up. Last I checked, it was pushing like $200 on price charting. But emulated copies are everywhere. You can download them in a minute. Seriously, it's very strange, but this is the only reason that you'll be able to play this game, through emulations. Because with emulation comes preservation. While I personally am always going to advocate preserving copies in their original forms, you can't get past the fact that emulated copies are typically some of the only ways you'll be able to find these things. Another big thing, improved graphics or netplay. Say you want to play an old game with some buddies. Say you're trying to get through a particular level in some brutally difficult NES game because, you know, they were brutally difficult. Man, I keep noticing the camera doing weird stuff. Sorry. Can't fix that. When you have the original copy, that requires your buddy to be right next to you playing the same game. What if he lives in another state or country? You're screwed again. That's where netplay comes in. With a lot of emulators, they can actually send inputs from across the world over the internet to have people play old video games together. And it's incredible. I've personally managed to beat, you know, that one level in Battletoads? I'll throw up a graphic of that one level in Battletoads. You guys probably remember, but have blocked out of your brains. I've only been able to beat that because I had a buddy of mine who played on an emulator together through netplay. It was the only way. We lived across the city from each other and we couldn't visit. And this is a thing that just happened in the last weeks at the time of filming this. Slippy, the dolphin variant for Super Smash Bros. Melee, just released really good netplay for Melee 20 years after Melee's original development. It's amazing. It significantly makes the game so much better because now I can play Melee with people and no one wants to play an old Smash game with anyone unless it's online. Also, like I said, improved graphics are a thing. If you've ever looked into specifically the things that come to mind are PCSXC2 Electric Boogaloo, the PS2 emulator. They have actually been able to add improved graphics and improved shaders to like Spyro the Dragon. And particularly my favorite is Drastic, which is a phone emulator that allows you to play DS games. And it improves and smooths so much of the DS games that you would assume that game was meant for your phone. It's incredible. But the original hardware doesn't require you to add this added clutter and clunkiness for a lot of games to set up netplay. And that's a thing. Back in the day, and I believe things have changed, many emulators actually still rely on port forwarding and IP connect stuff. No one wants to do that. I don't want to do that. I know how to do it. It's not particularly difficult. I just don't want to do that. You don't have to do that on your original hardware. As I was mentioning with Drastic, emulators come with portability. You can own a bunch of games, load up 1 billion games on your phone, and then play them wherever the heck you want. But if you're doing that on your phone, touch controls typically go from kind of annoying to straight up suck. How difficult is it to tap those tiny little buttons, or when they're like covering up your screen? It just drives me nuts. And you don't have those button prompt feelings, so you don't really know what button you tap. A lot of emulators have found a way to fix this, whether it be by just allowing you to connect your own remote to your phone or through remapping of touch controls, things like that, but they're not actual remotes. I refuse to accept a touch controller if I can just use an actual controller, but maybe that's just me. And for portability, you can really only play games prior to roughly the 6th generation of console, which is the GameCube, the PS2, the Xbox, even before the Dreamcast, stuff like that. Because most games past that have not improved their optimization stuff. My camera is just like, silence. There's the autofocus fixed. But a lot of games have just not been able to be ported over to phones because phones are not strong enough yet. Beyond that, a lot of emulators aren't good enough yet to be played on your phone. Sometimes you just gotta take the L on that one and admit to yourself, maybe I'm not playing a PS3 game on my iPad. Maybe that just isn't here yet. It will be. I'm sure in the future that people will eventually find a way to play these games on your phones. But a lot of games, at least at the time of this recording in 2020, you can't do it yet. Sorry. This last one, and probably the coolest one about emulation, is that you can possibly own entire libraries of games on like one flash drive. You can download entire collections of every ROM that's ever been released on a specific console in like one shot. And like I said, some entire libraries fit on a flash drive. But, and I mean this in a huge but, this is all dependent on the legality that copied ROMs have in your country. If you are not legally allowed to play emulated games like this, don't do it. Many sites have actually removed Nintendo titles due to Nintendo cracking down on illegitimate copies. That happened so many times over, it actually ended a few websites that I was very frequent on browsing because Nintendo began cracking down, and it's within their right. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm upset at the fact that a company is trying to protect their properties, but a company will protect their properties if they feel like they should. And Nintendo, with their virtual console and the fact that they are promoting their NES games on the Switch right now, it makes sense that they are trying to crack down, and it's their games, so fair. But that's what I got for you guys. What did you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I miss something? If I did, comment down below in the chat. Well, I mean, we kind of do chat there. I'm used to Twitch. Comment down below over down there and let me know. Maybe you'll be responsible for the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, you know, that little bell thing that you all forget about. And lastly, I gotta remind you that I am live at Twitch over on twitch.tv/EzekielJK. Go check it out. I am live over there at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Let me see, maybe I could pull up one of the worst things ever on our stream. We were currently talking about porn and how to market. I'll see you over on Twitch. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. See ya.
Ezekiel.